In the night, I borrowed his alibi. I met Daniel in an elevator that smelled like rain and old coffee, and I fell for him before the doors finished closing. There was nothing dramatic about it, which in hindsight is the strangest part. He leaned one shoulder against the panel, watching numbers blink upward as if the floor count might change its mind. He said my name first, and I realized he'd read it on the visitor badge clipped to my jacket. He was taller than me, elegant without trying, the kind of man who wasn't afraid of silence. My ex, Laura, used to fear the spaces between our words as if they were cliffs. Daniel treated them like soft landings. I'd come to the Baxter Hotel to retrieve a box. It wasn't mine. It belonged to my boss, a lawyer named Sokolov who collected favors the way others collected stamps. A simple pickup, he'd said. Discretion, Rye. That's me, Rye, short for Raymond, though I only hear the full version in trouble. Sokolov had a way of making everything sound simple until you were standing in front of the complicated part holding your own breath. Daniel asked if I was there for the conference. I told him I was visiting a friend, which was the first lie of the night. The elevator sighed open on the penthouse floor, and Daniel slid his hand between the doors to keep them from closing. "This is me," he said with a flicker of a smile. "If you're not lost, you should be." I was lost, but not in the way he meant. I watched him slip down the hall, keycard in hand like a broken promise. I almost followed him. Instead, I went to the mezzanine bar, where the air smelled like juniper and lemon rind, and tried to locate the safe deposit room. Sokolov had sent me a code and a locker number. He trusted me because I did what was asked and didn't ask my own questions back. Tonight was the first time I intended to keep a secret from him, and the secret was Daniel. I spotted Daniel again at the bar. He sat with a woman in a white dress that made the whole room turn its head. She laughed with her head thrown back in a way that said she was used to being watched. Her hand brushed his, then drifted down like a tired bird. She had a ring. He didn't. The bartender set 2 drinks in front of them, and I told myself to look away. Instead, I moved toward the corridor lined with black and gold doors and slid into the safe deposit room like a thief in a church. Locker 709 clicked open with a sound I felt in my teeth. Inside was a thin envelope and a hotel keycard with the number 1509 written in a neat, unforgiving hand. The envelope held a single glossy photograph and a folded note. The photo showed my boss, Sokolov, in a gray suit, shaking hands with a man whose face I recognized from the news. The handshake looked friendly. The captions it might inspire would not. The note was one sentence: "Deliver to 1509. Do not read. Someone should have specified that in bigger letters. I slid the photo back into the envelope, my pulse misbehaving. When I stepped out, Daniel was there, leaning against the opposite wall as if he'd always been. His eyes dropped to the locker key in my palm, and he smiled like we were sharing a joke we hadn't told yet. "Wrong turn?" he asked. "Right one," I said. He looked past me into the room and then back at my face, the way people do when they want to know more but won't ask. "I could use your eyes," he said, "on something that doesn't want to be seen." He nodded toward the penthouse corridor. "It's complicated." "I'm allergic to complicated," I said. "Then we should be fast." He didn't touch me. He just moved close enough that I could smell rain again, then turned toward the elevator as if I would follow without having to decide. I told myself I would deliver the envelope first, then indulge whatever intrigue was tugging at his sleeve. I told myself a lot of things as I followed him up. The penthouse suite wasn't his, not exactly. He slipped in using a second key card, moving like a man accustomed to thresholds. The lamps were on, the bed made with military precision, the windows black mirrors. The woman in the white dress stood by the minibar, her hair like spilled ink across bare shoulders. She didn't flinch when she saw me. She looked relieved. "This is Mara," Daniel said, and something impatient passed between them. "Hi," she said quietly. The word felt like it might break. He gestured to a door on the far side. "There's a camera in the dressing room," he said, "hidden behind the slatted panel. It was recording when we walked in before. The memory card is gone now." He met my eyes. "We need to know where it went." "There are people who can refuse cold water in the desert. I'm not one of them." "Why me?" I asked. "Because you look like you don't belong," he said. "That's useful tonight." Mara's phone chimed. She turned the screen face down, but not before I saw a name flash up: Conrad. I recognized it, and that should have made me leave. Conrad Havel, the billionaire who collected cities like other men collected watches. He celebrated his anniversaries at the Baxter, bought art like it was currency, married Mara 10 months ago in a garden full of rented doves. Conrad, who could bury a scandal under a private runway. Daniel saw that I saw. "It's what you think," he said, and for a moment the air had teeth. He didn't say the rest, that he and Mara were what you'd call an almost affair, which means everything everyone's afraid to name. That someone had turned it into an exhibit. That the price of a mistake is always simple until you try to pay it. "Why would he put a camera in his own dressing room?" I asked. Mara's mouth trembled and straightened. "Because he doesn't trust anyone and because he can," she said. "But it isn't him. He's in Dubai tonight. This is someone else." I slid the panel aside. There was a neat square of adhesive, a faint outline where a recorder had been attached. The wiring had been snipped clean like a surgeon with no nerves. I felt for the usual stupid hiding places, behind the vanity, under the chair, inside the hollow base of the lamp. Nothing. But there was a second adhesive square along the floor molding out of place, like a seam that didn't match. "The card's not the only thing missing," I said. "Something else was mounted here, probably a transmitter. Whoever did this wanted a copy in case they couldn't retrieve the card." "Is there a way to find the signal?" Daniel asked. "Not now," I said, "but there might be a way to find where they went." Mara's phone chimed again. She didn't move to silence it. The third chime followed like a threat. I stepped into the main room to give her privacy, which is to say I wanted to breathe. Daniel followed me to the window and leaned beside me, watching me instead of the city. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "The man who thought he was here to deliver a box," I said. "Who sent you?" "Someone who keeps their promises by locking them in drawers." "Will he miss you?" "He'll pretend not to," I said, and for a second we shared a small, crooked smile that felt like a confession. There's a trick to hotels. The staff notice everything and pretend to notice nothing. I told Daniel that if a camera had been removed, it likely passed through the service corridor to avoid the main elevators. The Baxter's service corridor is a quiet organism, full of doors that lead to other doors. If you put your ear to the wall, you can hear the building think. We moved quickly. I left the envelope from Sokolov on the penthouse desk with the number 1509 and the word "delivered" scrawled across the front. That felt like tying a knot with someone else's rope. Then we slipped into the service shaft where the carpet smelled like detergent and impatience. We found what we were looking for 2 floors down. A maintenance closet left barely ajar, a flash of gaffer tape in the bin, fine dust on the shelf with the twin imprint of a device that had once sat there. The dust hadn't settled. Whoever took the camera had done it in the last hour. Daniel crouched and pointed to a faint scrape on the tile where something heavy had been dragged. The scrape angled toward the staff elevator and then vanished under a new layer of wax. The Baxter polished its secrets. We would have lost everything there if the elevator doors hadn't opened for a housekeeper with a cart stacked high with white towels and small bottles of artificial promise. She was younger than us, older than the building, if you know what I mean. Daniel turned on a smile as if it could pass security. I turned on charm like a flashlight with dying batteries. She looked at us for a long moment and then tilted her head toward the ceiling camera, the obvious one, and shrugged in a way that said, "You didn't see me." She rolled past, and as she did, I saw the corner of a plastic sleeve sticking out from beneath the towels. A memory card sleeve, the standard kind you get 3 for $1 and can lose at exactly the wrong time. I grazed it with my fingers. She paused, our eyes met. I don't know what she saw, two people trying to cover a sin or two people trying to keep a truth from being weaponized. Maybe both. She shifted a towel just enough for me to take the sleeve. Empty. But there was a scrawl of numbers inside, 311. Not a room number, it started with a 3. A floor. Daniel and I took separate elevators down. We weren't that cautious until we were. On the third floor, the air was colder, the lighting friendlier, the carpet patterned with leaves to make you forget it never saw the sun. We found 311 easily because it wasn't meant to be hidden. A conference room. The sign outside read private event. The doors were cracked, the sound of muffled laughter pushing like waves through the gap. A small stack of gift bags sat beside the door, each stuffed with tissue that shone like false snow. The Baxter gave perfect lies the way some women give you perfect smiles. Inside, a man in a navy suit was telling a story about a trip to Macau while guests tried to guess how much of it was true. At the back, by the coat check, a portable AV rack blinked like a quiet heart monitor. Its operator wore a headset and an expression that said he had access to all versions of the evening and preferred the one that kept him paid. I saw a card reader tucked into the laptop. He saw me see it. "You're not on the list," he said softly when I drifted closer. "I'm the list," I said with a grin that works only when the room is busy. "We left a file upstairs. Did someone bring it through?" He relaxed half an inch. "Housekeeping dropped a card 10 minutes ago," he said. "Said it was for the event coordinator." The event coordinator was a woman in a cobalt dress with a temper she kept in a pocket. I didn't go to her. I watched the AV tech slide a window open on his screen and drag a file into a folder labeled backup. The file name was time-stamped for 37 minutes ago. He had a copy. Maybe he had the only copy. Daniel appeared beside me, calm as a comma. If he was angry, he wore it like cologne. "Walk with me," he whispered, and I felt the electricity of being chosen for something you know you shouldn't want. We stepped into a side corridor lined with framed photos. Famous guests pretending this was home, staff pretending they didn't exist. Daniel leaned against the wall and let his head fall back. "If that footage gets out," he said, "Conrad won't sue. He'll just delete us." "You mean you," I said, then hated myself for the edge in it. He watched my face as if we were trading currency. "Mara doesn't love him," he said, "but she isn't stupid. She won't leave a man who controls her life unless she's sure she won't lose it." "And you?" "I can lose mine," he said with a crooked smile. "I already spend it like it's burning a hole in my pocket." The dangerous thing about telling the truth is how easy it makes lying feel afterward. I told Daniel I could distract the coordinator while he pulled the card. He told me I shouldn't get involved, and we both moved at once. The plan worked until it didn't. I approached the coordinator with a question about a guest's dietary preference and whether the shrimp was sustainably sourced, which is the kind of question that can keep a professional busy for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Daniel slid to the AV rack like a shadow trying to remember how to be light. He had almost reached the laptop when the AV tech turned, a sixth sense, or a habit. His hand closed over Daniel's wrist. It wasn't violent. It was worse, proprietary. "Leave it," the text said. Daniel smiled the way men smile when they're about to do something they'll apologize for well. "This isn't yours," he said, and then he was closer, and then the man's hand loosened, and then the card slipped free, and then the coordinator was calling for security in a voice that said she'd been waiting for a reason all night. We ran, because running is a language you don't forget once you've learned it. We cut through a staff stairwell that smelled like bleach and secrecy, and burst into the mezzanine where the pianist was making Gershwin sound like an apology. Mara was waiting, car keys in her fist like a warning. Her eyes flashed from Daniel to me, and something like relief crossed her face because the card was in his hand. "This never happened," she said. "I was never here." "Where is here?" Daniel asked. "Between the life I have and the one I wanted," she said. "You were the bridge, not the destination." She took the card and held it like it might bite. For a second, I thought she was going to break it, end the night with a clean gesture. Instead, she slipped it into my palm. "If it's with me, it can be found," she said. "If it's with him, it can be taken. If it's with you, it can disappear." "Why me?" I asked. "Because you look like you don't belong," she said, echoing Daniel with a sad smile. "And people who don't belong know how to survive." We stepped outside into rain that knew what it was doing. Mara slid into a black sedan and was gone, proof that you can exit your own story if you decide to. Daniel and I stood beneath the awning like an unmade decision. I felt the weight of the card in my pocket and the envelope I'd left for someone else upstairs. I thought of Sokolov and his thin mouth when he didn't like the flavor of the air. I thought of Conrad in Dubai, buying a new city to match his suit. "What now?" Daniel asked. "Now I borrow your alibi," I said. He laughed once quietly. "What's my alibi?" "That you were with me," I said, and I realized I meant it. Not just for tonight, but for the kind of night that keeps echoing. We went to my place because it was closer, because the rain insisted, because there are only so many ways to say yes before you start using your hands. I poured whiskey and we didn't drink it. We stood by my window, which overlooked a streetlight that flickered like a nervous heart. He touched my wrist, the place where the pulse tells the truth, and I leaned into that touch the way ships lean into moonlight. It wasn't reckless. It was deliberate. There's a difference. We found each other slowly, as if learning a new language through repetition, as if wanting were a study we'd both paid tuition for. We didn't rush. There's a tenderness to secrecy, the kind that comes from knowing the world will misunderstand and choosing it anyway. I tasted rain on his skin and salt on his shoulder and felt something open in me that had been closed for years. I didn't try to name it. Numbing makes things real. This was already real enough. After, we lay in the dark listening to the street rehearse its lines. Daniel traced the outline of the card in my pocket like a superstition. "You're going to get calls," he said. "I'll ignore the ones that sound expensive," I said. "And the ones that sound like regret." "I'll return those," I said, and he laughed into my neck. In the morning, there were 3 messages from Sokolov, each shorter than the last. There was one from an unknown number that said, "Keep what you took or make it public. Your choice decides whose life gets smaller." The grammar made me think of Conrad's assistants, the kind of people who write threats like calendar invitations. I brewed coffee and stared at the card and tried to measure the size of the fire in my chest. "What do you want?" Daniel asked. "To stop wanting the wrong thing," I said. He nodded like he understood, because he did. He sat at my table, barefoot, beautiful, dangerous in a way that only someone gentle can be. "Then let's want the same thing," he said. "For once." We didn't leak the footage. That would have been vengeance. And vengeance is just a different kind of leash. We didn't give it to Conrad, who would have twisted it into a favor I'd owe forever. I delivered the envelope to 1509 as instructed, and on my way down, I slipped the memory card into the hotel's lost and found box with no label and no note. A week later, housekeeping would purge unclaimed items into a bin that went to a charity shop that sold electronic odds and ends for $1 each. Maybe someone would buy the card and use it to store vacation photos of a sunlit beach, their laughter overriding ours. Sokolov asked me what had taken so long. I told him I had trouble with a door. He held my gaze for a second too long, then smiled like a closed lock. "Happens," he said. Conrad's people never called again. I think they got the message they wanted without the evidence. That's how power works. It threatens you into doing its job. Mara sent one text, "Thank you. Burn this." I didn't answer. What I had to say wouldn't fit in a message, and besides, some words are better when they have nowhere to go. Daniel and I kept seeing each other in the quiet spaces between obligations. We learned each other's stories like songs you hum at red lights. The world still belonged to men like Conrad and Sokolov, but nights didn't. Nights belonged to us, and to the rain that returned at the right time, and to the rooms that chose to forget what they saw. We were careful, and sometimes we were not, and somewhere in the middle we found something that felt like a truce with ourselves. If you're waiting for the twist where everything breaks, I could give you one. There were days when we didn't call, and nights when the city's teeth felt too sharp. But we had an alibi that wasn't a lie. On the night the world tried to script us into someone else's tragedy, we chose a different ending, the kind you don't post, the kind you carry in your pocket like a small, illicit heaven. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'm proud of this. When a man I wanted looked at me and asked for my truth, I didn't hide behind the old ones. I gave him the new version. We're still making it up as we go, like thieves who learn to build instead of take. And when the rain comes, we open the window and let it in, and the city sounds like it's clapping for us from far away.